Hey, good afternoon. It's Mike with Insider Secrets, and I am excited about today's show. I'm joined by two guys that are going to talk to us about cost segregation. We're going to actually do a deep dive. I'm joined today by Brian and Geoff. And Brian, why don't you go ahead and tell the listeners what they're going to learn today?
Yeah, so we should hear a little bit more about what is cost segregation, how that can benefit your residential investors, and really to think about it this way. If you love paying taxes, probably not going to be a great episode for you. But if you'd like to find out how can I reduce my tax liability, take home a little bit more cash to reinvest, then hopefully we'll be able to help put some of that information out there.
That was an awesome loss leader. You're going to have to listen in to get the rest. See you inside.
Welcome to this week's edition of Insider Secrets, the show that turns multifamily investing into reality. Each show we interview guests who are seasoned professionals, actively closing and managing real estate deals. Your host, Mike Morawski, has more than 30 years of multifamily real estate investing and property management experience. Mike is the founder of My Core Intentions and has been involved in over $285 million of transactions. Focuses on helping you create short-term cash flow and long-term wealth. Here's your host, Mike.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Mike, your host of Insider Secrets, and Insider Secrets is brought to you by My Core Intentions. Glad you're here today. Hey, let me ask you, have you been thinking about your intentions lately? Where you want to go, what you want to do, your why, your goals? Those are the things that are so critically important that are going to help you move the needle in your business forward. So education is such a crucial part of that. And today we're going to really dive into some education. But first, I just want to remind you that at MCI, we invest in our clients' future. We have a couple of educational platforms. We help teach and help you create short-term cash flow and long-term wealth. You know what? The goal is to empower you through sound real estate principles to do more in your business and live a balanced lifestyle. We get out of balance so easy. But anyhow, enough about that. Let's dive in and start learning about our guests here. I'm joined by two guests today. I'm excited about that. Brian and Geoff. Would you guys say hi real quick?
Everybody.
Hey Mike, how's it going?
Glad you guys are here today. I'm really excited about our show and the topic that we're going to talk about because we're going to dig into cost segregation. But Brian has been helping businesses be more efficient and profitable his whole career. Prior to joining Incentex to lead sales and partnership development, Brian spent 14 years in payroll and HR industry, where he helped businesses run more efficiently and while growing and leading a sales team. As part of Incentec, he continues to help businesses by exploring opportunities in using R&D, tax credit, and cost segregation to get positive cash flow. He takes the lead on managing relationships with clients and partners. And Geoff has over 20 years of professional experience related to cost segregation, management consulting, technology development, and engineering. Man, oh man, I like having guys on the show smarter than me, but come on now, really? Hey, since 2004, since 2004, Geoff has overseen thousands of cost segregation studies over a range of properties, including single-family, rental properties, strip malls, plazas, industrial, manufacturing properties, Vegas resorts and casinos, and high-rise buildings. So obviously with our multifamily sector, Geoff is really going to be able to help us a lot in that area. At Incentec, Geoff leads the cost segregation practice, specialty shop focused on tax credits and incentives for helping small business individuals. Hey, you know what? I'm going to let these guys talk about their background themselves first. Hey, Brian, why don't we start with you? And one question I always like to ask my guests is, and Geoff, you can be prepared for this as well, is in one word, what best describes you personally and professionally?
I would say probably learning. It's kind of a weird word, but for me, I think what motivates me is the constant learning, whether it's a new product, a process, new people. So for me, I think what drives me is I have a big appetite for learning and meeting new people, hearing new things.
Yeah. I'm in that same ballpark, right? I love education, and I talk to people all the time. "Hey, how much are you spending on your education?" I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on coaching and training and seminars and books and tapes over the years. And I still don't think I know enough or know it all. And I think that's how we grow. So that's good
Yeah.
though. That's a great word.
I think I'm working on my MBA in Audible right now, so I pretty much wear that out on a daily basis.
Do they have a coupon for that or?
Haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. Hey, how about you, Geoff?
I wish we compared notes because mine was education.
Wow.
So it's all about growth, whether that's through podcasts or reading something online from a credible source or just bettering yourself through personal development. I'm all for that type of thing.
Yeah, good. I don't know, 48, 49, almost 50 episodes in on this podcast, and nobody's ever mentioned education or learning. So my hat's off to both of you because you just hit a home run, two of the same word in the same show. So I think that's great. Good for you guys. Hey, Brian, why don't we start with you? Tell us a little bit about your background, maybe roll your sleeves up, go a little bit more into depth and how you got into this space today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in sales and sales leadership 14, 15 years now. Spent most of that time in the payroll and HR world, and was able to move up, and I sold on the street. I led a team. I was able to lead regions, and was just had the opportunity to come on board with Incentax, Geoff, and our other partner, to really help take what I like to call a boutique cost segregation R&D tax credit company and really be able to help take it to the next level, be able to improve some partnerships from outreach and put a little bit of process around that to be able to scale the organization. And the advantage is most of my time was spent in the corporate world, corporate America, and there's benefits and there's some great things and there's some things that may hold you back. But then with Incentax, it really is the opportunity to come into a small business that everybody's invested and we're all shooting for the same goal. So my journey here, that Geoff's our expert in cost segregation, and really what my job is to go out and help create those relationships and find new partnerships and clients.
Yeah, that's awesome. And how about you, Geoff? Why don't you talk about your background a little bit more? I know it's pretty healthy background and brings you to this place where it's really effective for the small operator or in the big operator for that matter.
Sure, absolutely. So my background in engineering was I graduated with my bachelor's in computer science. So I was a developer for a while. And in the world of cost segregation, you can't go to school for it. So everyone that's in this niche industry got pulled into it somehow, some way. And for me, it was my college roommate. He introduced me into the career field several years after college. And so I was programming for a while, and then I made the switch over into cost segregation because even though a lot of cost seg is still 90% behind a computer screen, I wanted a little bit more interaction with people, and cost segregation through the travel, through the consulting of business owners and property investors. I got a lot of that. And so I like it a lot.
Yeah. Listen, I know I've got some listeners right now that are doing this going, God, what the heck is cost segregation? So can you bring some clarity to that? Big picture of what that actually is and what we do and the process and how it helps. So I know there's probably 5 questions there, but tell us what cost segregation is.
Sure, absolutely. So there's, like you said, there's going to be a long version and there's going to be a short version. So I'll go with the 50,000 overhead view of it. So cost segregation, what it does is it essentially gives you your future tax savings in the present time. So when you have an investment property, the government through depreciation allows you to recover the cost of that asset in our case, multifamily properties. So if you buy a multifamily property, you're going to get this benefit called depreciation over a set amount of time, 27.5 years. Now, what cost segregation does is it allows you to get your future tax savings. So your tax savings in years 20, 21, 22, 20, all the way through 25, and it'll give you that upfront now. So it allows you to take a bigger chunk of your depreciation.
Okay, great. And so when we start to talk about depreciation and we talk about taking depreciation quicker or accelerated depreciation, we might be a little ahead of the game with this question, but let's dive into the clawback piece, right? At what point does the IRS start to claw back on that depreciation when you trade out of the property?
There are very few reasons why a cost segregation study would not be recommended. And one of those reasons is if you plan to sell the property in the short term. So anytime you sell a property, there's something that's called recapture tax, in which, like you mentioned, the IRS will want to claw back those benefits that you took with the accelerated depreciation. And so the rule of thumb there is generally a holding period of about 3 to 5 years from the time you implement the study in order for the benefits to even out. Now, of course, for long-term holding, they benefit the most, long-term investors, because the longer you hold a property, the better a cost segregation study will work for you.
Okay, so it's about the length of time then that you actually hold a property. And one of the things that I teach is about exit planning, right? So part of exit planning could be a recapitalization of the property, where you refinance the property. What if you do that? So I'll give you an example. So I would run a spread on a deal, maybe 10 years. And I'd say, okay, at year 7, that's my sweet spot. If I'm doing cost segregation along the way, and at year 7, I refinance that deal, but don't give up control, continue to own it, I eliminate any of those issues with the recapture, don't I?
Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. So when you originally purchased the property, your accountant or your tax preparer puts that asset on your books. And so whatever the original purchase price was of that property, that's the basis that cost segregation works out with. So any sort of financing that happens behind the scenes doesn't affect that asset on your books.
Okay, interesting. So my understanding of cost segregation has always been this. If I put a doorknob in a place, and this is how somebody explained it to me, like very simplistic. If I put a new doorknob in, instead of expensing it and only taking that deduction once, I capitalize it and I make it as part of the improvement, which increases the value, and then I can depreciate it over time. Is in a simplistic form, is that really how it works?
Yes, so when it comes to improvements or capital expenditures that you make to properties, there's a way of viewing these improvements. One category is repairs and maintenance, in which you can fully write off the cost of those improvements. Let's say you repaired some partition walls or something like that in a property. But there are all other capital expenditures that have to be depreciated. Say, for instance, you replaced your HVAC units outside. Now once you replace those assets, the tax laws are, there's a specific recovery period for each of these assets. And so you have to be depreciating those assets based on the tax laws. And one thing that often gets confused is that the recovery period is not the same as a useful life. So in our example of replacing HVAC units, you might replace an HVAC unit every 7 to 10 years, but the recovery period unfortunately, is the length of the building. So you'd have to depreciate that over 27 years.
Okay, interesting. So what's the process? How does the process work?
Sure. So the process of a cost study is, you can think about it as an appraisal, but it's used for tax purposes. So there's two types of cost segregation studies. One is if you're purchasing a property that's existing, so you're buying an existing multifamily property, or you're constructing it from the ground up. Now, the process is similar between both of those, but in new construction projects, we're looking at detailed blueprints. We're talking to your general contractor, looking at the payment application to see exactly how much costs you've spent to build that property. Whereas in an acquisition project, we're going on site and we're taking our notes and measurements, and then we go back to the office and we create cost models of everything to recreate the entire property. And then once you've rebuilt that property, then we segregate all of the assets into their proper tax lives.
Interesting. So is there a length of time that the process takes to put this all together?
Yeah, from the time we receive all of the information, it could take anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks, so about a month.
Okay, it doesn't take real long. It's something that can get done, sounds pretty quickly, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. And as we get closer to tax deadlines, we get a lot of last minute projects where we have to turn over the projects really quickly. So of course, larger properties take up a large amount of time, but in general, you can turn around the project relatively quickly.
Interesting. So what are some questions that an investor, multifamily investor, operator should be asking people like yourself in your industry before they engage with them to do their cost segregation studies?
Yeah, so one of the nice things at Incentax is, if you are hesitant or are wondering if a cost segregation study can benefit you, we're always glad to run the numbers beforehand and give you an estimate of your benefits, as well as a quote for the fee of a study. So that way you're going in knowing not exactly how much you're benefiting, but you'll know exactly what the cost is going to be, and you can review that with your accountant or tax preparer.
Interesting. So when you talk about benefiting and the benefits, is it going to increase my cash flow, or is it going to be on the wealth management side and really increase the back end profitability on the property?
Good question. So cost seg is all about cash flow. So we started with saying that cost seg allows you to take your future tax savings and gives it to you now. So let's say that you made $100,000 in a year and your normal depreciation was, just by owning the property, $20,000. Now with the cost segregation study, we might find deductions upwards of $200,000 or $300,000. So then instead of being taxed on your income that you made before, $80,000, your net income, your net taxable income might be reduced down to zero. So all of that savings that would normally go to your tax payment, you get free right now. So that cash flow is unlocked. And so cost segregation at its core is a time value of money play. It's all about opportunity costs, that the money that you save now from not paying those taxes you can use to make some capital expenditures, buy another property, invest it somewhere else, and so forth.
Well, and I think that's the point that sometimes sends it home for people who maybe aren't familiar with this and they're trying to figure out, hey, does cost segregation make sense? Because I've had conversations where somebody says, why wouldn't I want to take that benefit over the 27 years? I might want to space that out. There's some good benefit to that. Obviously, that's the option, right? You can do that. But it's the same. Would you rather have 27 years worth of money right now that you could then, if we got investment minded people here, you could take that full chunk of money and invest that now and get returns on that now versus, it being like an annuity that pays out every 27 years. And so that's really that benefit. You're going to get it one way or another. It's just, do you want to wait 27 years for the full benefit, or are we pretty much like most of society is right now? We want it all right now, right? Take it all right now. And then now that you have that benefit, what can you do with it? And that becomes that time value of money, right? Now that you've got that money, how can you grow that in other ways?
I equate this all the way back to the beginning of this conversation where you guys, your words were about learning and education, right? These are things that aren't taught in school, right? And we're not taught at the educational level about this. And it's things that we learn on the street, in business, being an entrepreneur, being a leader. You start to learn these other ways of creating cash flow and long-term wealth. And that's what I love to teach. And that's what I like about this subject, is that we're bringing more of that value to the listeners, which is really awesome. So here's a couple things I like to always do on the show, and that's to ask some generic questions about business and leadership and things like that. Geoff, tell us, what are the 3 best resources that you like to use in business for technology, systems, team building, those types of things?
Sure. One of the big things that is almost everywhere is the internet, right? Especially in this pandemic world where we're largely staying at home or keeping distance. A great resource that I use is the internet. And that's because in my industry, in the tax industry, you often hear new tax changes, and the IRS, they release stuff on their website, and there's a whole world of information that you can get that's just literally at your fingertips there. Oh, another resource that I use is just the processes. So sticking to a known process, reiterating to make it like a best practice, and staying true to what you're going to do, not taking any shortcuts.
Sure. Yeah, interesting. Good for you. How about you, Brian?
For a lot of what I do, it's that outreach. And one of the biggest tools, it's the way that you and I met, Mike, LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Utilizing LinkedIn for just a little bit of the brand management and the outreach. And it really is the way to connect, especially in the times we live in now. So that's probably the biggest tool that we use right now. Also, we manage a lot of this stuff that we're doing through HubSpot. So I've seen a lot of people use HubSpot for various things, but it's a great way to manage activity through accounts. And then from a people resource, one of the things that we lean on very heavily the accounting community, CPAs, accountants. We try to partner with them a lot, just because everything we do on our side, it's a specialty service. And a lot of your accountants are generalists, right? They have to know a little bit about 300 different things. And so when something needs a deep dive, like cost segregation or our other product R&D tax credits, that's been our resource, that we become their resource to outsource that deep dive.
Yeah, very interesting. How do you make high stakes decisions? Brian, let's start with you on this one. We're all faced as business owners, as leaders, especially in this time and things that are going on in the world, we're faced with choices and decisions, right? How do you make high stake decisions in your life?
Yeah, I think this is a good personal question, right? Because I think everybody would definitely tackle this differently. One of the things I've learned over the years, it hasn't bitten me bad yet, so I still go with it, is I go with my gut. Like, honestly, whatever my initial decision is usually the right decision. Now, I have to go back it up and I need to do some research. For me, if my gut isn't telling me that this is the right thing, because the couple times I've gone against my gut, it's bitten me. And so I've learned to just listen to my own intuition. And that's the leader for me to say, hey, is this something that is even a viable choice?
Sure. How about you, Geoff?
I like to think about all of the likely scenarios that can happen from a decision and then see which ones are more likely than others and which scenarios you would want the outcome to be. So although you face some sort of analysis paralysis where you just have so much information coming at you in all these different situations, I think you have to narrow it down as to which scenarios are likely given the results that you want. And so acting on those types of results should guide you. And then once you've made a decision, be confident with it. So it goes to what Brian's saying with go with your gut. If you've thought about a decision, just trust in that process and stick to it.
Yeah, it's so important. It's so loud, especially with social media today. We get hit with all these messages. I think the old statistics were like you got 4,000 messages a day, and it's probably 10 times that now. So from all the different areas. So it's tough to make choices and decisions sometimes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're almost always dealing with a world where you're dealing with imperfect information. So you're never going to have 100% of things. So you've just got to go based on your experience and what you want as a result.
Sure. So this show is called Insider Secrets. And what we like to do is provide tips and strategies for the investor, the owner operator. And I'm hoping that both you guys have something to share today in that arena. Geoff, let's start with you. And what would you suggest that the owner operator look for today, and in your space or not? So.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm just going to go with cost segregation studies. So what's surprising to us is we've had clients that own single family rental homes that do cost segregation studies. Like these properties are relatively lower in basis than, say, our commercial property clients. However, we've run across investors that have $1 million portfolio of properties and they've never heard of cost segregation studies. So the insider tip I'd like to say is, educate yourself a little bit on cost segregation, see if it fits with you, and if it makes sense, then usually that's something that can benefit you, especially with cash flow being king.
Yeah, awesome. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what Geoff said on one of these. And we've talked a little bit about how if it's a new construction, if it's a new purchase, it's a great opportunity to grab that cost segregation because you're getting that full value. However, if a property is already owned, somebody already has it in that portfolio. Maybe they've owned it for 5 years, they've owned it for 10 years. There is still depreciation that can be added in. So don't think about this as, hey, I just need to do this cost segregation on my next purchase. If you currently own investment properties, commercial properties, and a cost segregation study has not been performed on it in the past, you can perform that on the whole group. So it's not just a new purchase option. It is something that is available for properties that somebody already has in their portfolio. And the other piece would be, this is a question that's come up, and I think sometimes this happens with some of your smaller multifamily, but let's say we had somebody who bought $1 million building and had 3 units in it. The owner lives in one of those units. Question is, hey, can I still use cost segregation on that? They can. We just push out that 1/3 that they live in because they cannot do the cost segregation on their own residence. But then the other 2/3 of the building, we're able to do a cost segregation on that piece of it because that is for a commercial use and investment use. So sometimes people think that may rule them out, but there's basically, if you own a property and it's an investment, most likely you're going to be looking at an opportunity to utilize cost segregation.
Sure. Interesting. Hey, what my hesitation was before was, Geoff, you had made a comment and it made me think, can you do cost segregation on one single family house?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Interesting.
So,
I want the listeners to be aware of that even if you own just one building, you don't have to own multiple units, just one property or one house. What business goals does Centex have for the next 12 months?
I think for us, the organization is 10 years old. It's run really well. We've got a strong group of people, but it's really to say, hey, can we share this with more people? Can we be a resource to more CPAs, to more real estate professionals, more investors? And in doing that, what that'll do is it'll scale the company a little bit. That will help us share our mission with others who want to be a part of it. To grow both externally and internally is what I'm looking for.
Nice.
Absolutely. I would just agree with that.
Oh, great. So if I'm out shopping deals today, is there anything that I should look for up front before I buy something that would make me aware that cost segregation would work or wouldn't work, or would be more beneficial or not?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're looking for a property, a lot of times there can be a differentiation of this property you can just buy and this asset will start making money for me. Whereas other properties, you might have to put in a lot or a significant amount of money to improve on those properties. The beauty with cost seg is you can do a cost segregation study for both of those types of properties. So if you're acquiring a property and putting in a lot of work in renovations, you can also get the benefits of those renovations to a property. So it's good to know what sort of CapEx or spend you're going to be doing on improvements when you're looking for a property, whether that's in your budget or not. But just know that from a cost seg perspective, you'll get a benefit on both sides of that.
Sure. Great. Hey, so this is where we get to the fun part of the show now. And with two people, I think this will be great because you guys are both in different parts of the country. Geoff, you're in California, and Brian, you're where again?
Arizona.
That's right. Why don't you guys each tell us what your favorite tourist attraction is?
In our own state, or?
Yeah, where you're from, where you reside.
Okay,
And
sure,
it can't
absolutely.
be Disneyland.
Darn, I gotta come back. Definitely, if you've never been to California, Southern California, you've got to visit Hollywood. You might see the walk of stars on the ground and whatnot, but a lot of things, what shocks most people about when they visit Hollywood is, and maybe I'll be blasted for this or whatnot, but it's a dirty place. There's, some panhandlers and things like that, but there's definitely a lot of history there, and it's what makes LA. So you can, one street can be really nice and another street may not be the greatest, but there's a lot of activity there. So I would say if you're coming to Southern California, you got to visit Hollywood area.
Hollywood and Vine, nothing like it.
Yeah.
Brian, how about you?
Yeah, so I could cheat and go really easy and say the Grand Canyon because I guess that supersedes everyone. But the interesting thing about Arizona is there are so many awesome things that if some of the different areas were in other states, it would be the number one attraction in that state. But we just have about 17 of those here. So it's we're fortunate to have so many. But if I had to pick one that's easy to describe, this one's going to be a little bit easy too. So Flagstaff, Arizona. And then you've got the Snow Bowl, which is a ski mountain. And that's what throws people off a lot. Like right now, here it is, the middle of January, and it's going to be 70 degrees and sunny here in Phoenix. But you can jump in your car, drive 2.5 hours, and you can be in Flagstaff and be in a pine forest. You can be in freezing weather, and you can be skiing or snowboarding. So just that sheer extreme difference you get in a 2.5 hour drive and being able to have access to that stuff, that's one of my favorite places.
Yeah, awesome. How about the best book you've ever read?
Right.
So I'll jump in on that one real quick. So there's an author, his name's Ryan Holiday, and he's got a couple books out. And the one that has been impactful for me, and I've read it a couple times in my life, is called The Obstacle is the Way. And it's a great book when it comes to mindset. So when you feel like you're up against the wall or you're struggling or having troubles, it's one of those books that can help level set you and get you in that right mindset to keep moving forward and achieve what you're looking to do.
Nice.
Nice. Mine is somewhat similar. So remember the last day of school or college where the professors took a little bit of a day off and they told about life. They told stories about life, what to expect out of life and what their personal life journey was. Well, there's this book that I've referred to a lot. It's a fairly older book and it's hard to find now, but it's called Remember Who You Are by Daisy Waitman. And this book is a collection from 15 professors, and it's about what they talked about on the last day of their class. And so it's a lot of life stories in there, and I always enjoy those types of life stories. So I really like that book. It's really short, easier to read, but it's powerful.
Interesting. That sounds really interesting. I always like those types of biographies or life stories or situations. I think we live in a culture where story-driven learning really helps too. Hey, Brian, if people want to get a hold of you or Incentech, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, the easiest way is LinkedIn. We're easily found there. So it's Incentax, Incentax. You can find our company page. You can find me under Brian L. Goodwin on LinkedIn. And then we also make the email real easy. So to get me, it's bg@incentaxllc.com. And for Geoff, he's GG. So we got BG and GG. We make it easy.
Wow.
Geoff with a G.
Not to be confused with the Bee Gees.
That's it. I don't know. Maybe,
Nice.
maybe that's our new thing.
Maybe you guys can capitalize on that. That might be good. So,
Yeah.
any last comments or thoughts for the listeners?
Hey, Mike, thanks for having us on. I enjoyed our initial conversation, and thanks, and hopefully some of your listeners get something out of this.
Yeah, it's been great to
Yeah.
get to know you guys. Go ahead, Geoff.
Absolutely, Mike. I was just going to say that thanks for putting out this type of content. It's very educational. It helps a lot of people. And so keep doing what you're doing, and thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. It's been really great to get to know you guys and learn a little bit more about the process. And hey, listen in every Tuesday. Go to Apple and Spotify and like us and love us and all that crazy stuff to help our ratings. Go to YouTube and subscribe on Apple. Follow us on social media, and I look forward to seeing you here next Tuesday.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you for joining us for another great episode of Insider Secrets. As always, Insider Secrets is brought to you by My Core Intentions. Join us on social media and visit mycoreintentions.com, where you can get expert coaching on all things multifamily investing and property management. We're looking forward to having you back again next week for more Insider Secrets.